Welcome. It's good to have you back with us at Somaliland National Television. This is the English news with me, Mohammed Aden. Let's take a look at the main stories making headlines. Chief of the Somaliland Army informs the press about recent clash with militiamen. Somaliland's Minister of Justice receives clothing and other items as assistance to the inmates in the Somaliland jails. Somaliland's Chief of Army Ismail Shaqale told the press that the Somaliland Army has taken a major offensive on areas controlled by militiamen loyal to the self-proclaimed Khartoum state. The Chief of Army informed the media that the army dispersed the militiamen and members of the so-called state who were to hold an inauguration ceremony. Chief of the Somaliland Army Ismail Shaqale, accompanied by a number of high-ranking officials from the Somaliland Army, told the press that the Somaliland Army has taken major offensive on areas controlled by the so-called Khartoum state in the eastern regions of Somaliland. Chief of the Somaliland Army Ismail Shaqale, speaking to the media, elaborated in detail about military operations that the Somaliland Army has carried out earlier this morning to conquer Sahdair town, which is to be among parts of Somaliland territory and initially being in the hand of militias loyal to the proclaimed state Khartoum. These militiamen have been planning to inaugurate a new leader as Ali Khalif Galaid. Ismail Shaqale also stressed that the Somaliland Army will continue operations to make sure that Somaliland's stability is in the hand of the military and that all risks and threats are prevented. The Somaliland Chief of Army Ismail Shaqale concluded the press conference that it's not acceptable for anyone to hide from parts of Somaliland's eastern regions of Sool and Sanaag, and said that the military operations carried out by Somaliland's army earlier today will continue for the rest of the coming months. Minister of Justice Hussein Ahmed Aidid received clothing and other items donated as assistance for the inmates in the prisons across Somaliland. The event had in attendance several governmental and non-governmental officials, as well as a wide array of other distinguished guests.
Ministry of Justice has arranged today an event with the core idea of receiving huge amount donations which are aimed to hand out to the prisoners in the country. The event had in attendance of several high-ranking officials from the Ministry of Justice, joined by other governmental officials including the Chief of Somaliland Custodial Corps, senior figures from the Ministry of Justice, and other representative figures from the International Organization of UNHCR, which was the organization made the offer of the products assigned for the prisoners. Mr. Abdiwali, who is a member from the Ministry of Justice, provided the initial remarks on the occasion to clear up how the role of the ministry and revealed that the Ministry of Justice is fully aware of the prisoners and that's always in place to partake programs to alleviate the imprisonment of the prisoners. Mr. Abdiwali, speaking on the occasion, highlighted several approaches about the efforts that the Ministry of Justice is engaged in order to focus on issues related to enhance the living conditions of the prisoners and the entire people in the capital city and other regions around. Importantly, he concluded that it's important for the people in Somaliland to take part in initiatives to upgrade the living standard of the prisoners. Abdiwahab Hamud Douale, a representative member from UNHCR, was among a key figure who made the speech at the event. Mr. Abdiwahab, speaking on behalf of UNHCR, pointed out the components of the aid towards the prisoners through the assistance of the Ministry of Justice and said, after having identified the need gaps exist in those areas, we've organized to make this offer to them as on the basis of coming up donations which we allocated for the prisoners. And on the other hand, Mr. Abdiwahab praised the Minister of Justice for the efforts that on behalf of the ministry he made to make this happen. On the conclusion, Minister of Justice receiving the donations from the International Organization of UNHCR has commended the organization for excelling in its efforts aimed to provide assistance to the prisoners. The minister also urged them to continue the supports. The minister finally transferred and handed the donations directly to the Major General of Somaliland Custodial Corps.
You're still watching the English news program on Somaliland National Television, the only Somali-speaking channel with English news. And now for the main international headlines in detail. Pro-Russian rebels have opened up new fronts in Ukraine's south, with the separatists claiming they've captured the eastern town of Novosibirsk. It comes after the US accused Russia of directing a fresh offensive in Ukraine, with Kiev consistently accusing Moscow of deploying equipment and forces on Ukrainian territory. Alexander Zajarkano, self-proclaimed Prime Minister of the self-declared Donetsk People's Republic, a key rebel group, has said any Russians fighting alongside them do so as volunteers. We never hid the fact that there are many Russian citizens among us, without whose help it would be very difficult to fight now. There were about 3,000 to 4,000 of them in our ranks. Many have left. Many more are still here. There are also many soldiers that prefer to spend their leave among us, brothers who are fighting for freedom rather than on a beach. It's thought the rebels are now advancing in the key port city of Mariupol, an area of strategic importance for the control of the Sea of Azov. Ukraine's armed forces had been making significant gains against the separatists recently, tightening their grip around the strongholds of Donetsk and Luhansk. Fighting in the area has already resulted in many civilian casualties, with renewed shelling on Thursday thought to have claimed at least 16 civilian lives. But in Kiev, support for the military remains high. At a rally in the capital on Wednesday, people called on the Ukrainian government to provide more supplies and reinforcements to the armed forces in the country's east.
Al-Qaeda Syria wing, the Nusra Front, and other Islamist fighters have seized a border crossing on the line dividing the country from the Israel-occupied Golan Heights, according to the monitoring group. The Syrian Observatory of Human Rights said the post on the Syrian side was captured from forces loyal to President Assad after fierce clashes. During the fighting, a stray bullet wounded an Israeli soldier in the Golan Heights. Israel said it responded with artillery fire at the two Syrian army positions. This was the latest spillover of violence in the 3-year-old Syrian conflict. The crossing is monitored by the United Nations, which oversees traffic between the two enemy countries. But there are only some 200 meters between the warring adversaries' posts.
That's all we have for you today. Don't forget that you can join us at the same time tomorrow. Until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.